So what do you think would possess a woman? A woman maybe who kind of looks like me a little bit, but she's 20 years younger, almost 20 years younger than me. What would possess her to get in her car or whatever and drive 8 hours from Cleveland, Ohio, all the way up to Dodge Correctional Facility in Wisconsin? I mean, that's a 16-hour round trip to see convicted murderer Chris Watts. That's what I've been thinking about for about 2 days. Imagine her doing that 11 times. And these visits with Watts, these in-person contact visits, they last 3 hours. So they're listed as contact visits on this latest info I just received from Wisconsin DOC. They're not just the video visits you can do, from the comfort of your home with an inmate. That is 16 hours worth of travel round trip. I'm assuming she didn't drive 8 hours from Cleveland up to Wisconsin, visit him, talk for 3 hours, and then drive 8 hours back. I know some people can do that. When they're desperate, they can do it. They love driving. Maybe someone drove her. I don't know. But that's a lot of driving. That's a lot of effort. So if she didn't just do a round trip and just double on back, that means she likely had to spend money for a hotel room or stay somewhere, a Verbo, an Airbnb. I keep asking myself why. Now, Chris Watts turned 40 years old this year, May 16th, 2025. His date of birth, as those of us on Watts Island remember, was May 16th, 1985. Now, this mystery woman, I'm not giving out her name, as you can tell, because people go crazy in these true crime cases. I mean, it's just, I try and protect people as much as possible. This woman, who's still on his approved visitors list as of last month, she is 38 years old. So as of June 6, 2025, Chris Watts had 7 people on his approved visitors list. His mom, his dad, his sister, a 45-year-old female friend. We've seen her name. I'm not naming her either, but we've seen her throughout this case. She's been there from the beginning. I believe she's just a friend of Chris. And then there's 5 and 6. They're a husband and wife team, 58 years old, 60 years old, respectively. This man's name we've seen from the beginning. He was in Discovery. He was a friend who lived in the same neighborhood as Watts. He went over to the Watts' house about 9:30 p.m. that fateful Monday, August 13th, 2018 night when Shanann and the girls were just still missing. So that's 6 people. I kind of ruled them out like, oh, I know who these people are. I've seen people fall on and off his visitors list. The 7th name, however, was kind of new to me. She's this mystery woman, not the woman pictured in this video or through the thumbnails. Those are just recreations, mock-ups I had done just to give viewers kind of an inkling of what she kind of looks like. This is a woman who has been on his approved visitors list since May 8th, 2023, and she's still on there as of last month. So she's been on there like 2 years. So lickety split, after she got approved back in May, about 2 months after being approved, she headed on up from what might have been Chris Watts' first in-person visit in a long time. On July 24th, 2023, she spent from 3:01 p.m. to 6:02 p.m. in contact with Chris. Why did Chris give her such access? Now, I'm not exactly sure how it looks there. I'm not sure if she's able to be in a room with him and he's shackled or what the situation is. Some prisons are different. I can't really find how it looks inside of Dodge Correctional Facility. I don't know if they're like sitting across from a table. I don't know if it's like the movies where they have a glass between them. I can only kind of relate it to my local jail, where I go in for prison ministry. I don't think they're allowed to visit like face to face where they can touch. They have these video screens, like even though you go down to the jail, you don't go and like sit across from the person or, talk on a phone where you see them through a glass partition. There, it's still like a video visit, but you're in the prison. I don't know, would she drive 8 hours for just a video visit like that? In prison video visit? No, I think it's probably more in contact. Maybe across from a table, I don't know. But again, I'm not going to dox her. I'm not going to give her real name. I will upload these documents, but I'm sure I'll redact them still onto Patreon, so look for that link below. So once I saw this woman's name, and she has a pretty unique name, and of course I, did my due diligence. I love to researching her age, her name, everything. From what I gather, this is a woman who hails from Cleveland. She's an entrepreneur. She's worked in fields like hospitality, management, internet, retail, etc., according to her LinkedIn profile. And this woman by far has the most in-person visits to Chris Watts last year in 2024, more than his mom and dad even. If I pulled up my previous Chris Watts public records request, I can compare that and see where I left off. I like to see the whole story. So we're going to take a look at her dates of visits, and I wonder why these visits abruptly stopped on July 25th, 2024. I don't think it's because Chris Watts has been moved. I believe that was fake news going around a few months ago, some kind of mistake. We'll talk about that too. I love to research. So we've looked at his visitors list, all the approved people, only 7 people on there. I'm looking at his inmate visitation history. You can see on the top right-hand side, this is as of Friday, June 6th, 2025. So this information is pretty up to date. So I see his mom and dad back in 2023. They had a video visit that was probably from home. And there was some other woman, I don't know who she is, had a video visit with Chris Watts. And then his mom and dad again in 2023 were visiting him September 11th, 2023, September 12th, September 13th. Those were in person. They must have just driven up to Wisconsin. They were in town. Then this mystery woman had her second visit with Watts that year, September 25th. Only 12 days after he, had contact with his parents, she had another visit. This mystery woman had another visit with Watts. So September 25th, November 20th, November 21st, she probably stayed in town that day from the 20th through the 21st, 2023. Several times here, so if she's back to back visiting him, I'm assuming it wasn't 11 individual trips like I initially thought. Some of these she just doubled up, stayed the night, came back, visited him for another 3 hours. So September 25th, 2023, this woman visited him all the way from 3:10 to 7:09 p.m. Wow, so that's nearly a 4-hour visit. How did she get so long? That's like beyond the rules. Maybe no one was paying attention there. That's a long visit. Okay, then November 20th and the 21st, she visited Watts again, several hours each visit. March 25th and the 26th and the 27th, so she stayed there, I guess, 3 days in town, I'm assuming locally. She visited him back to back to back. Wow. Hours, just spending hours. Then again on May 16th, oh my goodness, a birthday visit. Wow, I just realized that when he turned 39. May 16th, 2024, she drove to see him, I guess 8 hours if she's truly from Cleveland, like my research says. She drove to see him for his birthday, to celebrate his birthday with him. Wow. Then on June 8th, 2024, another visit. And then here we are with the last visits listed. July 24th, July 25th, 2024. Another back-to-back trip. So is she driving from Cleveland to Wisconsin, booking a hotel room or something for 2-3 days for some of these visits? My question is why? Is she working on a book, a project, or is she just really a friend? I don't know what kind of friend with any kind of benefits you can have in prison, especially this prison. Some prisons allow conjugal visits, but I don't know if this is one of them.
No.
I'm sure Chris Watts needs some friends, and I'm sure he still gets her phone calls, but they did not give me that audio. They didn't even list out the phone calls, so I can't really see, are they talking on the phone, and is it every day? Did she switch from driving to see him in person? Maybe it got too expensive, too time consuming. Was it for a specific purpose, a specific project? I don't see her listed as any kind of lawyer or any kind of author, but she could be, I don't know. So I don't know that detail, but Chris seems like he could use some friends. Now he just turned 40 and I can't help but think of Shanann Watts. Her date of birth is January 10th, 1984, meaning she would have been 41 this year if she were allowed to live. Imagine their children. You just keep these victims in your mind, imagining how they would look how they would be. I always imagined Shanann would have been fine. I know she was afraid of raising 3 kids on her own in Colorado. If Chris had not carried out his diabolical plan, allowed his family to live, if he had left them, which he just should have done, of course, instead of harming them. Well, he shouldn't have done anything he did, but you know what I mean. If he would have left them, if he would have gone off, tried to have a happy life into the sunset with Nicole Kessinger, Shanann would have thrived. She would have just been fine. She would have been able to move on. So I did look up some Dodge Correctional Institution information, 3 hours per visit, all of that, yeah. But then I was like, oh wait, this has got to be fake news. I started looking into these rumors that Chris Watts was moved to some Graham Correctional Center prison in Hillsborough, Illinois. People are saying this ID number, M08331, that's Christopher Watts, as if no one else can have the same name. His name is more common than this mystery woman who's visiting him. But this person's record I found in this PDF, I've linked to it below. This Christopher Watts, his holding offense was just criminal defacement of property, less than $300. Jail time was only 96 days, I guess. IDOC, the Illinois Department of Corrections days were 12 for a total of 108 days. That's a lot less serious crime than what Chris Watts is facing and serving, obviously. And even though Chris Watts, you can't necessarily find him in certain inmate searches, like you can't find him on VineLink, other places, you can find him if you search Access Corrections. That's how, people who want to give money, they do it. He's still listed in Wisconsin DOC, and you type in his name and he pops up. So I believe he's still in Wisconsin. But I got these documents through a FOIA. I forgot I even put this public records request in like a year ago. I just received these documents on July 11th, 2025. Again, they're updated pretty currently as of June 6th, 2025. And it indicates another indication he did not move anywhere 3 months ago to some minimum security prison. I couldn't find any indication of that. I got this Department of Corrections, Office of Records Management, these documents, this response. It says the date of my request was July 9th, 2024. They received it the next day, July 10th, 2024. No wonder I didn't remember. I'm like, whoa, this is a year ago. So they gave me some info, but of course they redacted some info. I was asking for all the basic information sheet for the inmate, any phone call, audio, visitor history reports, approved visitor list, all booking photos and photos taken during incarceration. So they gave me a photo, but it's nothing new. I believe this is the most current photo anyone has of Chris Watts, and it's dated October 27th, 2023. He's smiling. It's the front view. That's all I got. So as for these reports that he's, gained all this weight and all this stuff, we can't really tell because I don't have a current photo. I couldn't corroborate anything about him moving anywhere. The last sort of official mainstream media report we got about Chris Watts, it's from the New York Post. It was talking about, how he lives in fear of his fellow inmates. They want to kill him. This was published a year ago also, July 4th, 2024. It's talking about he's living in a hell of his own makings, serving out his life sentence in a small cell at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. He hardly talks to anyone. He chooses to read his Bible, ponder the wife and 2 young daughters he ruthlessly murdered in 2018. So the New York Post said they spoke to 3 people who have had contact with the 39-year-old killer. Back then he was 39, now he's 40. They've talked to him. They said he lives a sedentary lifestyle. He's gained significant weight. He's lost most of his hair. Well, as of that 2023 photo, it didn't look like he's lost most of his hair. So until I see photographic proof or some kind of video evidence, I don't know if I believe the rumors I'm hearing. That's why I like to put in actual requests and see what the actual law enforcement institutions, what they have to say. They're saying he avoids contact with other inmates for his own safety. He attends Bible studies. He keeps to himself. So this guy named Eddie Neves, he spent a year at the prison alongside Watts. I wonder like how closely. He said a lot of guys would like to get their hands on him. He killed 2 little girls who didn't do nothing to deserve it. He's the lowest of the low at Dodge. A lot of people want to get their revenge for those girls. They protect him at Dodge. If the guards weren't always around, everyone would take a swing at him. He could be right there. I remember going skiing in the 90s in Wisconsin. It was either Dodge or the one next to it, whichever one Jeffrey Dahmer was in. He was still alive, and I could barely sleep that night because the prison was right through the woods. And I was like, oh. Anyway, we know another inmate took care of Jeffrey Dahmer, so I wonder. But Dylan Tallman, he was Watts's former cellmate from 2018 to 2020, saying Watts is often in danger in there. He's an outcast. I don't know if that book was published yet, that devotional book he was working on with Watts. Tallman said when people found out that his victims were 2 little girls, they wanted to kill him. He had nowhere else to turn. I think I was his only friend. Every day he thinks about what he did. He has photos of the girls and he prays for forgiveness every day. But he knows he can't undo what he did. Now back then, it says a spokesperson for the Wisconsin DOC said Watts has had no scheduled visitors for several weeks. He occasionally receives a pastoral visit. His mother visited him earlier this year. He has several prison pen pals, mostly women. So I wanted to compare that to the actual visitors' history here. So that was written in 2024, July. Now, technically, it's not true from what I'm looking at. I mean, this woman visited him. First of all, she visited him in 2023 a few times. Now, in 2024, she visited him March 25th, March 26th, March 27th, May 16th on his birthday, June 8th, July 24th, July 25th. 7 in-person visits with Watts. You know, well, we won't count the last 2. The article wasn't written yet. But at that point the article was published, he had already had 5 in-person visits with this woman. That's why I take things with a grain of salt sometimes until I can confirm them. But the DOC spokesperson allegedly said Watts has had no scheduled visitors for several weeks. Okay, maybe that's true. Well, not technically. It depends on when this person talked to them. But this was published July 4th, 2024. And I'm looking right at the prison's visitor list. Okay, technically it's true. He hadn't had a visit since June 8th at that point. Several weeks. Yes, okay. He hadn't had a visit, but I don't know. To me, that's a lot of visits. I don't see his mother visiting him earlier this year, which they mean 2024. She visited the previous year. So, you know, some things, it's like a game of telephone, you know? So I don't know how much I believe this entire article, but it's saying, this Eddie guy is saying Watts is effed in the head when you're in prison with a lot of guys who did really bad things, but you're still considered the worst person there. You're just evil. So that's why I say he does need a friend. Part of me wonders too, did this woman visit him? I had to ask ChatGPT and get ideas of like, why would she go through all this trouble driving? Okay, it may not have been 11 times, but at least several times, a very long drive. I mean, she drove July 2023, she drove September 2023, then a couple of visits in November 2023, 3 visits in March 2024, visit on his birthday 2024, June 2024, and then the 2 visits in July 2024. So technically she made 7, not 11. 7 twice. Don't let me start singing Beyonce. Okay, 7 visits. 7 drives up 8 hours and 7 drives back 8 hours, unless for some reason she moved closer and I haven't seen an updated address for her. But part of me wonders too, was she doing it to get an inside scoop to try and sell to different publications or what? But anyway, they gave me these records. They would not give me the phone calls, audio. It's not for them. For that state, personal communications is not a record under Wisconsin statute 1932-2. I'm sure she'd have to go through a lot to get into that maximum security prison to see Watts. A man, a high-profile prisoner, convicted of heinous, horrible crimes. You can't wear underwire bras. I know that from going into my local jail, but, they're really cool with us. Certain facilities are really, you can't have any metal anywhere. So you can't have metal on the bras, including the strap adjusters, the hooks. And imagine she'd have to wear like a jog bra or something with no metal. And these visits, in-person visits, are scheduled through some sign-up genius. They require prior approval, and they have to be on the inmate's approved list, all this stuff. They have to schedule 2 business days in advance. You have to go through some hoops. So this woman went through some hoops, obviously, to go see Watts. I just want to be a fly on the wall and see what they talked about. The visits are scheduled Monday through Thursday. And of course, you can't bring in weapons. You can't bring in a cell phone. Not like you can sit up there and take pictures of him. All these prohibited items. You have to dress appropriately. Certain clothing items are prohibited. I know that when I walk in my local jail and I see a sign like you give them your driver's license, all this stuff, you have to be pre-approved. They run your history. They do a background check. All of that to let you in there. And I saw on the wall near the video visits, it's or over here actually, a different place. I don't know what goes on over there. Anyway, I see on the wall, no bikinis. I always thought that was funny. Don't come walking in here in a bikini trying to visit your man, Arrive on time. It says a maximum of $25 in change per visitor may be taken to the visiting center to be used in vending machines. No paper money is allowed past the lobby. Makes sense. The change has to be placed in a clear zip pouch. But it says vending machines with limited items are available for use during visits in the visiting center, but you can't share the food or drinks. So I don't know if that means you can't dig into the same bag of Doritos, but is she going there? Did she go there and buy sodas or whatever? And then is she able to give Chris Watts his own snacks? I can't tell what they mean by it can't be shared. Visitors can't leave money for persons in our care. That's what they call them here at Dodge, PIOC. And leave your wallets, purses, cell phones, all that stuff in your car. So I'm why did she start going to visit him? Why did she stop coming in person? Did she run out of money? Obviously, it looks like, nothing happened where he cut her off. I've seen people just cut off. They show up on his lists over the years and then they're gone. Something happens. They have a falling out. He's exposed or he feels used or whatever is happening and he cuts people off. But as of last month, she's still approved. So I'm maybe they're still talking, maybe just on the phone. But I had to ask, why would a woman drive 8 hours from Cleveland to Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin to visit Chris Watts? He's serving life in prison for this widely publicized 2018 horrible murder. Shanann was pregnant. His daughters were so young. She was pregnant with his son. So it says her motivations may be motivated by a complex mix of psychological, emotional, and social factors. Here's some possibilities. Hybristophilia. That's how you pronounce it. Hybristophilia. It might be the first time I heard that word was associated with Chris Watts' case, and I'm sure it'll really be associated with Brian Kohberger's case. Speaking of which, I got the Idaho 4 book. I started reading it this morning, just multitasking, doing a lot of stuff at once. But hybristophilia is known as some psychological phenomenon where individuals, usually women, are romantically or sexually attracted to people who have committed violent crimes. It's called the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. So it's kind of I think of Beyonce and Jay-Z where, they were doing that Bonnie and Clyde song. In the video, it's almost let's be bad together. But I'm do you guys know how Bonnie and Clyde ended in a hail of bullets? But anyway, some people, maybe they see themselves as a bad girl and so they want a bad boy, I guess. Some are drawn specifically to high-profile criminals because of their notoriety, power, or perceived danger. Ugh, that part is just really strange to me. Who wants that kind of power? But I can almost see it when these people are exposed. You watch them all the time. You see video after video about some high-profile criminal. And if some women think he looks halfway decent, then they go for it. I don't know. Another reason could be a desire for connection or meaning. Loneliness or a lack of meaningful personal relationships can lead some people to seek out intense, emotionally charged connections, even with incarcerated individuals. A woman might believe she understands the person in a way others don't, giving her a sense of purpose or emotional fulfillment. That's sad. Some people could be lonely. I understand it more where if it's like a woman and her husband and something happens, he's imprisoned, and then she continues to see him, like bring the children to visit or whatever they decide to do. I kind of understand that more because she knew him before. She loved him before whatever crime happened. However, if it's a woman who didn't know Chris Watts from Adam, watched the details of this heinous crime, and then decide I'm gonna go just visit him because I'm lonely, or because we can have this intense connection because he's probably so lonely too and he'll really appreciate me visiting him, that's pretty sad. Could be because of delusion or fantasy. Some individuals form intense parasocial relationships with infamous criminals, believing they are misunderstood or victims of injustice. They may construct elaborate fantasies about saving or redeeming the person. Believe me, I'm thinking all about Koberger when I read that one, delusion or fantasy, especially after watching that Idaho 4 doc, just showing certain people like building little shrines to Brian in their home, or the Brian Nation flag, or, some people claiming, and I don't know what's true, claiming they're in contact with Brian, claiming Brian he only pled guilty because he was forced to. Like constructing these fantasies around him. People thinking, oh, he's totally innocent and he's so beautiful and smart and he's just railroaded. To me, that takes a whole lot of delusion, a whole lot of delusional thinking to go that far. But they won't, these same people, I should save it for the Koberger video, but they won't give, like Dylan and Bethany, the surviving roommates, they won't give them the grace of anything. Like Dylan, I believe she had denial and stuff was going on in her mind, and that's why it took so long for them to call 911. They won't extend hardly any grace to the survivors, but they have all this grace for Brian, the convicted quadruple killer. Oh, he's being railroaded. He didn't do anything. Very weird. Fascination with true crime. Well, I believe most of us watching this video following these cases have that. With true crime media being so popular, some people become deeply obsessed with specific cases. Yeah, I was obsessed with this case, I know that much. This obsession can evolve into a personal investment in the criminal's life, especially if they consume interviews, documentaries, or letters. I've read stuff about the Watts case, and of course I've read the discovery, I've done all this stuff, but I haven't ever contacted Chris, or I don't want to be in his life. I did think about, okay, what if I did write to him back in the day and try and get, this is before he confessed, or just information out of him. But I was like, I don't want my name showing up in Discovery and all that. I don't want to be like one of these women allegedly, contacting him. And I'd have to really feel an unction from God to do that. Control and safety. Here's another one. Ironically, a relationship with a prisoner like Chris Watts may feel safe to some women. He can't leave them. He can't cheat, well, he could in there, or harm them physically. A woman holds power in the relationship, often being the one who decides when to write, visit, or even stop contact. I don't know, that wouldn't float my boat either. But I get it. Some people, some women might feel like, okay, he's in there, he's guarded, he's controlled. He can't hurt me, but I can go in there and talk to him. I'm in control. He's waiting for me to put money on his books. He's waiting for me to do whatever, to visit, and I can stop at any time I want. I can see that element being attractive, especially to people who have felt out of control. But people who have felt in danger in their relationships, I feel like you wouldn't go visit a murderer, but attention seeking or identity. Visiting such a notorious figure can confer a strange sense of status or uniqueness. Yeah, that's if you come out and you talk about it. That's why I keep these people's names under wraps, because some people, they can watch videos and go off and do the craziest things. That's why I always recommend no one contact anyone. Don't watch a video and go use it to do something nefarious. It's just information. So it might allow this attention-seeking person to form a new identity or narrative around their life. I mean, I get that. They want to be, maybe some people perceive Chris Watts as having a twisted sense of power. Some people think being famous, whether you're infamous or famous, it's just power. And some people are just attracted to power, no matter where it comes from. This is the only reason I would see ever contacting him or trying to visit. Religious or redemption motivations. Some people believe in forgiveness and feel called to offer support or spiritual guidance to those who have committed heinous acts. They may think they're helping someone find God or seek redemption. Wow. So, I don't know, it's so funny the way I read different comments and stuff. But yeah, prison ministry aims to help people, turn their lives over to Jesus. That's what Jesus said, when I was sick, you visited me. That's why churches have those hospital ministries, or the chaplain. When people are in there about to go to surgery, you can have someone pray over you. Or Jesus said, when I was in prison, you visited me. And they're saying, Jesus, when did we do this? When did we see you in the hospital sick and visit you? When did we see you in prison and visit you? And he's saying, nevertheless, you did it to the least of these. It's as if you did it unto me. And so that's why Christians can go in and the least of the least, the thrown away members of society, no matter what they've done. I know it's very difficult. That's why sometimes I don't even want to know what a person has done, because I'm like, whoa, I can see different news cases and then I'm like, whoa, sitting across the room from that person, like, oh, I remember your case. I definitely try and separate that. I just want to minister to people. There but for the grace of God go I. I've never been arrested or in jail, only by God's grace. Let me tell you, not because of what kind of person I am. So that's the reason people go in. I never felt that calling for Chris Watts. He claims to be a Christian now, reading his Bible. I hope it's true. That's all I can say. I hope it's true. I hope it was true for Jeffrey Dahmer, who got baptized in prison, I guess up there in Wisconsin, before he was, taken off this earth. So if this woman has visited Chris Watts multiple times, her behavior suggests a sustained emotional or psychological investment beyond mere curiosity. So I explored more with real life examples because I was really trying to understand, my goodness, what would make someone drive 16 hours round trip to see Chris Watts? Maybe she did form some kind of romantic or deep feelings for him. Maybe she was drawn to his notoriety or dominance or danger. There could be some deep-seated psychological needs within her that she hasn't explored, she hasn't healed. Maybe, if it's not for some specific project that I don't know about. Of course, if it's for a book or interview or an article or something like that, if I saw it was, an established writer or a person who wants to be a writer, whatever, then it would make more sense. But I haven't found anything like that yet. Perhaps I'll see it like that one day. But there was a woman who wrote a book, Women Who Love Men Who Kill. Sheila Eisenberg, she interviewed dozens of women who pursued relationships with infamous criminals. And a lot of them had past traumas themselves they were trying to work through or didn't work through, I guess, low self-esteem or unstable relationship histories. All these women who pursued horrible killers. The second you read about anything they did, you're like, stay away from me. But Ted Bundy, notorious killer, he received dozens of marriage proposals during his trial, and he even married a woman, Carol Ann Boone, in court and had a child with her while on death row. I do remember that. I think they sneaked off beside some vending machine. I don't think they were supposed to, but she eventually got impregnated. Stuff was, I think, a little more loosey-goosey back then, but it probably was the first time this huge trial is on TV, people seeing snippets, in color, this good-looking guy. He had charisma and intelligence, so a lot of his admirers found that appealing, and they believed he was wrongly accused or deeply misunderstood. Now, no matter what happened in a guy's past, you can feel sympathy for a person, what they've been through, and still hold them accountable. R. Kelly, I went to high school with him. I feel sad for when I read about what the trauma he experienced as a little boy, but he still is rightly being held accountable for, not healing from that trauma and instead turning it around and inflicting it upon others. There's a way we can have sympathy for a person, but not, give them a pass for everything. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, he married a journalist, Doreen Lyoy, maybe I don't know how to say her last name. In 1996, he was on death row. Oh, he looks so scary to me when I see those videos and photos of him. So she described him as kind, She said she didn't believe the evidence. Friends say she became consumed by the relationship, just abandoning her old life. I gotta Google her. Like, I wonder if she was married or did she like leave her husband for him? Boy. Scott Peterson, he was convicted of killing his pregnant wife, similar situation to Chris Watts, and in spite of that, he received fan mail, love letters, marriage offers. Some women believed he was too good looking to be guilty, or just a victim of the media. So I think that's the road people are taking, or they took with Ted Bundy, with Scott Peterson, these guys who look good and they're not the typical version of murderer some women have in their minds. And sadly, oh, that's scary for them to think, oh, he looks too good to be a murderer. Oh my goodness, that's really scary. They don't do it as much with Chris Watts, I guess. I mean, I'm sure he gets a lot of love letters like he did. We'll read snippets from some of them. Thankfully, I don't think that's happening with Stephen Stearns. I don't see that kind of backlash, but it is definitely happening with Bryan Kohberger. I mean, so far, me reading this book, just starting out, the Idaho 4, someone is saying like there's never been that much social media attention on a case. So of course, with so many people, millions of people looking at the case, it might be a small subset, but you will have a small percentage, you know, of course, since it's a larger pot, you'll have a small percentage, but still a larger amount of people in there thinking, oh, Kohberger couldn't have done it for whatever reason. He's too smart. Some people think he's good looking and all that. Whew. It's wild to me when people will absolutely ignore any evidence that, you know, makes their little lover boy look guilty. Or they'll always come up with an excuse for that. Or a rescuer complex. I definitely could see this one. A desire to fix or redeem the man, believing she can help change him. Would be weird because it's like, if he's serving out a life sentence anyway, I mean, technically he can, whatever person can change for the better. They can become a better person in prison. I believe that. In Christ, anyone can change, anyone can be saved before it's too late. But, you know, in this respect, if it's a rescuer or someone trying to fix the man, it's almost like, I don't know, for what purpose? They could just have a fantasy attachment. They can be obsessed again with true crime, or they could be trauma bonding. The women, you know, who have abusive pasts, that's who they're drawn to. Abusive and controlling men, because it feels familiar. If their dad, you know, did that, treated their mom that way, maybe that's normal and they go for that. In the specific case of Chris Watts, some people don't believe he really did it. They believe Nicole Kessinger had more of a hand in it. Or they believe he found God and deserves forgiveness. Well, I mean, that could be true. Like, maybe he really did find God. Maybe he really is a Christian now. Maybe he really is forgiven. He's truly repented. But that doesn't mean we want a relationship with him. Or again, they're trying to save him. They feel he's lonely and broken. He's in danger. They talk about one woman. She was actually on a documentary. I'm not going to mention her name. She was married. She had a young baby. They exchanged all this explicit and emotional correspondence. She found him gentle and misunderstood. I think she's divorced now, if I'm not mistaken. She was, like other women, perhaps projecting her own narrative onto him. And some of these women, they might be bored, like maybe they're married, maybe their husband pays them no attention. Maybe they're having a baby, they're bored, and then they're like, ooh, I got access to Chris Watts. This makes me special. This gives me something different to do. So often emotions, you know, this deep psychological needs, fascination, control, connection, fantasy, redemption, self-worth, whatever it is, driving 8 hours, it can get tangled with this media-fueled obsession and this idealized version of Chris Watts that does not reflect the reality of his crimes. Indeed, like the people who are such Bryan Kohberger fans or such Chris Watts fans, I'm like, do they ever think in their mind, like, literally imagine what Chris did to his family? Like, really get it in your mind? Who would want to be around that? Romantically, I'm saying. I'm not saying in terms of a journalist or something. Who could imagine the horror Bryan Kohberger inflicted upon the Idaho 4? Just gruesome, and then just want to be around that, want to be near him. Different women, I wonder if they regret it now. They wrote these letters of love and support to Chris Watts. This woman, Tatiana, she wrote, I found myself thinking a lot about you. I hope I put a smile on your face. She's the one who sent that bikini photo. She offered to brighten his days. I always wonder, like, did she know that was going to show up in Discovery? Some people don't know a lot about true crime, and I was like, whoa, it's there. Depending on the state, like Colorado released Chris Watts' phone calls. Wisconsin won't. Colorado must be more open, I guess, maybe. Another woman, Candace, she wrote him so many letters. She wrote to Chris Watts, "In my heart, I know you're a great guy. If you do write me back, I'd be the happiest girl alive." She used hashtag Team Chris. Chris is innocent. I hope she's better than that now. And I'm sure the parasocial nature of this case, too, really had an impact on how these women felt. For example, Shanann Watts had so many videos on Facebook, and Chris appeared in, several of them. So I know if people watched and watched, they perhaps felt like they knew Shanann, they knew Chris, and that lended themselves more towards, oh, I really want to see him in person, maybe. This woman named Hannah wrote, "I feel this connection to you." Another woman said she simply didn't care what happened. She didn't care about what Watts did to Shanann and the girls and little Nico in utero. She's like, "Trust me when I say this, I do not care what happened." Those letters, those snippets illustrate emotional idealization, projecting this positive image onto Chris Watts, fan-like devotion using those hashtags, selective denial of his guilt, same thing they're doing with Bryan Kohberger, and the efforts to, establish contact, try and get on his visitors list, okay, here's a picture of me, and will you open up to me? Will you trust me? Can I get there? It's just a fantasy life. It's sad. I wish these women could create better fantasies. That's what I want to do, start using AI. I watched this great TED Talk where this woman, she used AI, I'm using it to enhance this video, envision Chris Watts, doing this, or the woman walking to the prison. There's great uses for AI. And even the thumbnail, everything. Imagine, this woman had a TED Talk. She used it to enhance her life, no longer sleeping on the couch, this woman who gave a TED Talk, and she used it to enhance her life. So my point is, these women fantasizing about Chris Watts or whomever, why not use your imagination to fantasize about a better life for yourself? If you're lonely and bored, imagine a better life fantasizing about, oh, I have friends, or I meet a great husband, and we get married and have a great family, or look, I start this business. Why not use your brain, your fantasy life for something positive, and that would benefit your life, not to its detriment. So Reddit users did notice this about the Watts case. 95% of the letters were written by women. The stench of desperation. They either said they didn't believe he did it, or they blamed Shanann. Now, it didn't help that Chris Watts blamed Shanann initially. That gave them something to run with. But he admitted later, no, he did it all. But I guess some people just didn't want to go down that path. And it gives them an easy reason to latch onto this guy. Like with Kohberger, they easily want to blame the surviving roommates or all these other people, the ones who found the bodies or whatever. I guess it's easier for some people to blame them incorrectly just so it can kind of excuse their devotion to Bryan Kohberger. A lot of these letters to Chris Watts came from divorced women of similar ages. So Chris Watts is 40, this mystery woman visiting him, or who used to visit him, maybe she will again, she's 38, very close in age, and just not willing to accept his full guilt, perhaps, or having trauma. And it's something about her, she just wanted to be there. I guess video visits weren't enough for this woman. She wanted to be in the same prison with Watts, perhaps right across the table or video screen or whatever, for whatever reason. I'm thinking of what a waste it would be to drive 8 hours and still sit in front of a screen. I'm like, you could have done that at home. But maybe it's, across the table. Maybe she just wanted to breathe his air. And that's maybe the end goal, the end game, her emotional fulfillment when she got in there and saw him face to face. But maybe she stopped going. Maybe she ran out of money, or maybe she realized this isn't giving me what I'm looking for. Maybe she realized the fallacy of her thinking. He's not what I thought he would be. Who knows? I hope we end up finding out why. For now, let's close with 1 John 1:1-3. I am writing about what existed from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our own eyes, what we have looked at and touched with our hands concerning the word of life, the one who existed before the beginning of the world, Christ, and the life, an aspect of his being, was manifested. That's what was truly manifested. And we have seen it as eyewitnesses and testify and declare to you the life, the eternal life, who was already existing with the Father and was actually made visible to us, his followers. What we have seen and heard, we also proclaim to you, so that you too may have fellowship as partners with us. And indeed, our fellowship, which is a distinguishing mark of born-again believers, is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. That's what I pray for a lot of these, especially women, glomming on to inmates in the wrong way, killers in the wrong way. Again, it's one thing if you're their family. I totally understand that. I don't expect people to cut their family members off. It's very hard to just turn off love one day, no matter how heinous their crime. I understand that. You can still visit a person and put money on their books and, they can still be held accountable. They're serving out their consequences. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong to me if a person is doing it for chaplain reasons, trying to minister to a person, or if they have a specific project. I love this one Esquire article that this writer was able to write after he went and visited a different Chris, a horrible crime against his family too. But he was able to get a confession out of him. So it can be value to me with journalists and writers, documentarians, whomever, going in there talking to people. I understand all of that. But when it's women, especially, going in trying to seek some kind of weird, twisted relationship with these guys, that's where I start feeling just bad for these women. My prayer is that they have given their lives to Christ. They're filled with the Holy Spirit, so they're directed and guided in a way that doesn't take them down that hybristophilia path. It's just not a good path, where it's like if they're lonely or they're bored or they're whatever, and they're thinking Chris Watts is going to fulfill some fantasy, or even marrying these guys. Different cases are different. You look at the Menendez brothers, the relationships they went through. Will they be out soon? And I understand some people are totally wrongfully convicted. So I'm not painting the entire thing with one broad brushstroke. But in this instance, I don't know, these women going after Chris Watts and the ones who'll probably end up going after Koberger and visiting him and perhaps marrying him and professing their love to him. I think they should take a beat, take a pause, pray over it, get filled up by the Holy Spirit so they probably won't desire that type of thing. And perhaps think more of the victims of these convicted killers and what they went through, as opposed to holding all this sympathy for these convicted criminals and saying like you don't care about what their victims went through. Anyway, so that's what I have for now. Look at the links below. I forgot to go through this one page here, now that I'm remembering it. The inmate record summary, and you can see it's as of June 6, 2025. It's talking about Chris Watts, and it shows me he's not really overweight. That's what it's showing me. Not all this weight that they're claiming he gained, because if these are his demographics as of last month, I don't know how often they get weighed. Well, he's 5'10", and it says 190 pounds. So that's kind of standard for his height, that weight. If that's anything current, I don't know, maybe they don't weigh them. Maybe that was his intake weight. It doesn't quite say. So if that's his current weight, he's not really overweight like people are claiming. And it does list here current incarceration details, last admission date December 3rd, 2018. That's when he was moved to Wisconsin. Last movement date December 3rd, 2018. That lets me know, okay, that was the last time he was moved. And it says current custody date January 22nd, 2025. Still in the maximum prison. He's a recreation worker 3, whatever that means. It shows his bed assignment. Hair is gray or partially gray. Native born, North Carolina, Fayetteville, 40 years old. That's the kind of details I like, even though it took an entire year for them to get me this info. That's the kind of proof I want, beyond believing, just rumors you hear. And I think that's everything. Beyond rumors and all these hyped stuff, which isn't based on fact, from people who don't want to just literally do the FOIAs. I don't know why people don't just do more FOIAs. Oh, I know why, because it takes so much time and effort. Some people are just like, you do them for me, but they'd rather believe rumors and lies than do their own FOIAs. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have for now. I'm going to go finish reading, hopefully, this Idaho 4 book. It's very, very long, so it's going to take a while. I plan to just do snippets of interesting things, make videos, and we get through that. And I still need to go over the Peacock documentary. There's a lot in the queue. There's other cases I'm being told about, so stay tuned. Who knows what's next? God knows. Thanks for watching.